G'day legends, I hope you're all fantastic. We have the Prometheus amplifier from Lichtlaerm Audio in Germany. If you're not familiar with this brand, I've demoed several of their pedals in the past. I've been consistently impressed with not only the tones out of the pedals, but the functionality and the design behind them. And when Daniel at Lichtlaerm told me that he was working on an amp a little while ago, I got very excited. I got even more excited when I started seeing and hearing demos of this, especially the videos done by my buddy John Brown, who has shot this amp out against several of the titans in the high gain amp ecosystem, and it has held up really well. It's a 2-channel all-tube amplifier, but it also has a built-in noise gate. It has MIDI switching so that you can essentially dial this in with your external effects and have a bunch of functions, including the channels and the voicings, switch in real time. There's an effects loop. There is the option to run basically any type of power tubes you like in this, and you can custom order it with your choice of power tubes, from EL34s and 6L6s through to super high power tubes like KT88s. And I think you can get up to 200 watts out of this amp if you run it with KT88s, which is pretty immense. There is a dedicated clean channel on here with 2 voices. One is a bit brighter, one is warmer sounding, so you've got kind of a Fender vibe and a bit of a high watt vibe in there. And then the lead channel also has 2 voicings along with a cut control on here, which is super powerful and will let you tune the response of the amplifier to the sort of music and the sort of tones you want to pull out of it. A 3-way byte switch on there as well. There's a master presence and depth, as well as a master volume on there. There's these 4 little switches that let you control the loop, the noise gate, whether the preamp is on or off. So if you wanted to use this with, say, an external rack preamp or a preamp pedal, you can do that, and a store button on there. So look, let's start out with the immense high gain, and I'm going to let you hear what the cut control does on there. Basically, the cut control at minimum, if you wanted to dial in some big old school dirty stoner or doom tones, you can do that. The higher up you bring it, the more it's going to filter out the sound of your guitar before the preamp, and it's going to make things tight and aggressive. And basically, crank that all the way up with an extended range guitar, you're going to be in Meshuggah territory. Turn it all the way down, crank the gain, you got that kind of 90s desert rock sound. So there's a PRS DGT in drop D to start off with. We will hear this with a few extra guitars on here, but let's hear that super high gain sound first. There is so much gain on there, but it is so malleable and controllable on there. The cut switch, as you can hear in there, in the extremes really does change the character of the amp. And I think if the amp didn't have the cut switch and it just fixed one of those particular settings on there, it would still be an amazing high gain beast. But having one simple knob to just sweep through there and find that sweet spot depending on your guitar and your tuning is very, very handy. You can hear the EQ in there is super powerful, but still pretty musical in there, especially cranking the mids. Sometimes you do that on high gain amps and it's just this unusable honky cardboard sound on there. I like as well that you can kind of crank the bass and the cut control and have them chase each other and interact to get the amount of tightness that you want there as well. That's with a gain at noon. That is more than enough gain for anything I would ever want to do. I can't believe I'm saying that. But there is a 3-way bite switch on there as well, which I'm guessing is just a 3-way bright switch on there so you can get some more aggression out of there. Let's hear the difference between the up position, where it is at the moment, then we'll hear center and down. This guitar, I like the aggression that I get with the switch in the up position, but it's pretty usable in that middle position as well. The down position is just a different vibe. I think that might work well with a guitar in a lower tuning, which we will hear in a second. The presence and depth control on here, of course, are going to be super important. I'll just sweep those for you so that you can hear the range of those controls. I kind of found the presence around 1 o'clock and depth around 11 o'clock is where I like it with my setup. But again, you've got the options to change those and dial them into taste. If all this amp did was at high gain mode of the lead channel, I think it would still be worthy of its status as one of the coolest amps that's come out in the last decade. But there's a lower gain mode on there where you can get some kind of classic rock tones. So if you flick this switch in here, I'm going to turn the gain and the cut down. Again, we'll play around with the bite control and the EQ on here. You can get everything from kind of almost chimey Vox or Plexi adjacent tones to your hot rodded 800 thing. So let's start again with the gain around, where do I have that? 9 o'clock on the dial. I'm going to bring the EQ back to around noon on here. Let's just see where we end up. interesting voicing in there. It's vaguely British sounding to me, but I don't know if that's Marshall British, Vox British, Orange British in there. It's got character though, which I think is really important. And I think that's a strong point of, especially the gain sounds on this amp, is it's not just another 5150 clone. It's not just another JCM 800 with an SD1 in front of it. Not that there's anything wrong with those tones. They are classic for a reason, but putting out a new multi-channel high gain amp in 2024, it's so cool to hear this actually have some of its own vibe and character on there, and it feels so good to play under the fingers as well. Let's go over to the first channel on here. We'll hear the difference between the brilliant and warm mode on here. Then I want to run a fuzz pedal into this so that you can cop a little bit of that high watt Gilmore-y vibe on there. But straight up, let's hear the bridge humbucker. Getting cleans out of a humbucker can be really difficult on modern amps, but I think this does it pretty well. Like the way that just lets the pedal shine on there. Also, since I've got a Strat in my hands, we should do some crunch tones out of this for sort of a Blackmore style thing. Pushing the mid-range on here is really, really nice. I feel like you don't need the cut control as much with a Strat, but let's just hear it where it is. before we finish up, we have to hear this in a drop tuning. I've got my PRS SC245 in drop C. This has been my #1 guitar for about a decade now. It is fussy with the type of high gain amp you play it through though, and I found I normally have to use some kind of boost before an amplifier to get the most out of it. So I feel like it's a good guitar to test with this onboard cut control and this high gain channel on here. So you can see where it's set at the moment. Cut is all the way down. Let's just have a listen to how much chungus we can get out of this guitar. That has to be one of my favorite high gain sounds that I've ever pulled out of any amp on there. And I don't need a boost with it, which is super impressive with this guitar. I love the way it sounds when you boost a slightly flubby amp, but the cut control on there, I barely need to use it actually. I quite like it with the cut at a minimum. With the cut around 1 o'clock, it is great on there as well. This is such an interesting amp for so many reasons, but you can have all the features and all the impressive specs and custom options you like, but if the amp doesn't have a discernible character, you're probably not going to end up using it that much. And I'm so impressed that Dan at Lichtlaerm Audio has been able to come up with an amp that has an insane amount of gain, a really clean channel on there, you know, not just an afterthought channel on there. That's designed for people who want to run their big pedal boards with multiple drives into the amp. Then the lead channel is just crushing. The cut control is a brilliant feature that I feel like every modern high gain amp should have. The fact that there's a built-in noise gate and effects loop, and there's MIDI switching as well as all the custom power tube options on there, make this a really attractive amp for so many reasons. But like I said earlier, it's got its own character on there. This would be so fun to blend with either a modded 2203 or a 5150 or a dual rectifier in there and use those amps for the reasons they're used. They are classics for a reason and they work in so many situations, but you could add this into the mix there to bring out some different character on there. I like that you can bring this cut all the way down, crank up the gain, and basically sounds like you've run a fuzz pedal into a high gain amp. And then you just twist the cut control and you've got this absolutely tight monstrosity on your hands. So we need to test one more feature on this amp before we go, and that is the preamp defeat. And I have to get my old 88 MP1 out for this. Okay, this is my 88 MP1 that has had the 3-tube mod from 88 Depot done to it. I love the way this thing sounds, and The only downside to running this is needing a power amp, and a lot of the time, if you want to quickly plug this in, it means you have to go around to the back of the amp, use the effects return, make sure the loop is on. I love that I can just plug straight into this, plug it into the front of the Prometheus, and then there is this little switch here called Defeat, which just lets you turn the preamp of the Prometheus off and go straight to the power amp, which I'm doing at the moment. It's a really handy feature on there if you were using like a high gain preamp pedal, or I guess if you had a modeler that you wanted to run into this and just bypass the built-in preamps, you can do that. But for now, let's hear the glorious 3-tube modded ADA MP1. That, of course, lets you use the onboard depth and presence controls in the power amp, as well as the built-in noise gate in there. So if you're someone who's got a few preamp racks or pedals around and you don't want to buy a dedicated power amp to use them, you can just defeat the preamp in this. It's a testament to the thoughtfulness of the design, and much like Daniel's pedals that he makes, this amp just incorporates so many features that modern guitar players want, and they're not gimmicky features or sort of, you know, perceived value add-ons where it can do all these extra things that you're never gonna need. These are things that just make life easier, and it makes dialing in a tone and the tone that you want to find quicker and easier on here. So it will come as no surprise to anyone who's watched this far in the video that this is an incredibly impressive amp. Really well put together, really well designed and executed. And I feel like it's going to be an amp that we look back on in 5, 10, 25 years time and think of as, oh, remember when that came out and then that added all those extra features that then kind of became standard. So I really do wish Daniel all the success in the world with this amp. It's such a fantastic sounding amplifier, and it's been super inspiring to sit down here and play this one. I'll put a link to the Lichtlaerm audio website in the video description. Let me know your thoughts in this amp in the comments section below. If you like what I'm doing here on the channel, there's various ways to support me. Just check the video description. Otherwise, go and play your guitars, make some glorious guitar noises, and I will see you all next time.